We are in Tennessee. Woo!
Okay. Nashville.
Tennessee. Tennessee has some really regressive policies, so it was really just enlightening to learn about a state that was more extreme than some of the other states that we had visited, and a state that really has latched on to discrimination in schools specifically.
We were looking at all these bills, and Nashville had this bill that was just like the Don't Say Gay bill in Florida, but Tennessee's version.
My name is Henry Seaton. I am the transgender justice advocate at the ACLU of Tennessee, so I do a lot of lobbying and testifying at the state capitol during our legislative session, trying to fight back against anti-trans bills specifically. HB 800 basically was like Florida's Don't Say Gay bill, but at a larger level. So Florida's bill went from K to third grade, I believe, or like sometime in elementary school, if I'm not mistaken. This one would have been K through 12. So at any point during elementary through high school, any material that addressed LGBTQ specific topics would have been barred from being in an educational material, which is a really horrifying thing to think about, and like how much history you would miss out on. And it's the message of like, you're not worthy enough to even be addressed in school. You're not worthy enough to be talked about. You're not worthy enough to know who you are, and your history is absolutely terrifying to think about. Trans people are public enemy number one right now, not only in Tennessee, but across the nation. Especially in different areas of the South. We see Alabama and their gender-affirming healthcare ban it completely passed, and it's been enjoined in court, which is amazing. But like we're seeing these everywhere, especially like thinking of Texas too, where parents of trans kids can be investigated as abuse, like child abusers. Like it's a pattern that we're seeing elsewhere as well. I think the basis of it being just general fear of learning something new, fear of like trying of a changing world, fear of being wrong. Even back in high school, I testified in front of the state capitol in like an education subcommittee against a bathroom bill that would have just fully barred trans students from using the correct restroom and locker room, dressing room, whatever. And I think of how this one Republican who came up to me afterwards and just wanted to learn more about what I had experienced in high school and how hard it was for me, and then ended up changing his vote, ended up killing that bill from just hearing like about a person's experience. So, and that happens over and over again, and just saying like, this is the reality of what they're trying to do. It's not like we're protecting anyone. We're just harming more and more and more.
Hey, my name is Kayla Gore. I am one of the founders of My Sister's House and the Tiny House Project here in Memphis, Tennessee. The mission and goal of My Sister's House is to provide housing to trans people, trans and non-binary people of color, specifically Black people here in Memphis, Tennessee. And also just to spread the awareness that there's a housing deficit and trans people are not even counted in that deficit. We're lumped in with cisgender people, which means that we get less resources that are designated specifically for us. That's what I want this program, this project to really exemplify to a lot of different places outside of the South, that this is a logical solution to the housing crisis. There are elected officials who are saying it's okay to demonize these people. So I really think about the mental health of the individuals that these laws directly affect and those people who are connected to them. I think it does us well to speak to the fact that it's not just trans individuals, it's trans youth that they're trying to criminalize, and their parents and the educators. So it's basically the government trying to interfere in the learning process. And I think that learning about other individuals who might not be cisgender in your classroom, I think that helps our society 10, 20, and 30 years down the line. And I think that that's what Republicans are aiming to do, is to make sure that there's no clear understanding of who trans and non-binary queer people are and who we were in history, so that there's plenty of confusion in reality in 10, 20, and 30 years.
My name is Sydney Bullens. Everybody calls me Sid. I'm a musician, singer-songwriter, have been for almost 50 years. I am a trans man. I transitioned about 10 years ago at an older age after a full career in the music business, after being married for 20 years to a man and having 2 children. Well, I always wanted to be a rock and roller. I mean, really, I just wanted to be a rock star.
I just had this kind of blind drive that I had something to give to rock and roll.
My famous story is that I crashed a party in September of 1975 at a recording studio where I knew Elton John was going to be. And it was a press party, and it was for another artist who had just signed with Elton's record company, Rocket Records. And I knew the owners of the studio, so I said, I'm going. But I was just supposed to be watching from the control room. But I was young back then, and I had some chutzpah, and I walked into the press party, and Elton walked up to me and introduced himself. And we had a little chat. Of course, I was completely shocked because I was just wanted to be in the same room. I didn't think he'd come up and introduce himself to me. And a couple of minutes later, a woman walked up and asked me what I did. I said I was a singer because I started singing back in LA and getting some work as a session singer and stuff. And she said, well, Elton wants to know if you want to go on the road with him. And 2 days later, after that party, I was rehearsing with Elton John. And a week later, I was on stage with him in a big, huge arena in front of tens of thousands of people. And that's really how I got my start in the music business. I have been coming to Nashville for about 30 years. After the whole flurry of success in the mid-70s with Elton, and then I had my own record out and I got nominated for a couple of Grammys. I sang on the Grease movie soundtrack, a couple of lead vocals. And after all that, it kind of waned. In the 80s, I think my androgyny became more of a bug than a feature. So I backed away from the music business. I got married, I had kids, but I still wanted to remain in music. So it was suggested to me, because I'm a songwriter too, that I come to Nashville. This was in 1990, and start writing songs for other people. And that way I could still have my family up in New England, and I wasn't on the road all the time and all that stuff. So I did that. In 96, my youngest daughter died of cancer. And that disrupted my whole life. And that actually, and I won't go into the whole story, but that tragedy over time actually brought me back into being an artist on my own, because I started writing songs after her death. And then about 10 years ago, I decided I was divorced. I had grandchildren by this time. I had nobody to answer to but myself. And a friend of mine transitioned from a woman to a man, and it blew my mind. When he transitioned, it broke something open in me, and there was no turning back. And so really, really quickly in 2011, I decided to transition, and I changed my name in October of 2011, and came out publicly in 2012 as a trans man, and have never looked back. My mission now, as an older person, as an elder, is to tell my story. I lived a whole life as a woman. I lived 60 years as a biological woman and as a she, as a her, as a person. Even though I was androgynous and heads would turn and people would say, is that a man or a woman? I still was a woman. I identified as a woman in public because I just didn't know what else to do. I mean, that was just my life for that long. And when my friend transitioned, it completely opened up something in me, a crack in me that said, no, I don't have to do this for the rest of my life. I can become all of who I am, all of my authentic self, no matter what, even at 60 years old. My reaction to Tennessee House Bill 800, you wouldn't be able to broadcast on this, to be honest with you. It almost makes me cry, to be honest with you. I well up, because what that bill does is erase our identities. It erases the identities of young people, young LGBTQ people. All of it is about erasing the identities of these young kids. These kids' lives are at stake. Their lives, their very lives are at stake.
In all actuality, yeah, we do have an agenda, and that's basically to be respected, to have equal rights under the protections of the 14th Amendment. We want everything that everybody else has. That's our agenda. And if that means being respected in schools by our pronouns, and if that means being respected by our chosen names versus our legal names, then that's what that means.
Being able to express what it's like to be trans and be joyful about it too, and not just like keep that pervasive narrative of like transness is this depressing mental illness, but rather like being trans is a source of joy and pride for me. Is always just like, it's unbelievable that I get to do this for a living.
They won't take you over the gender line. No, they can't take you over the gender line. I had to crawl over the gender